Good morning, everybody, and great to be here. Thank you very much for staying before the break into Dimerix Opportunity. So just to give you a little bit of context about the company, it was founded in 2004. It is an Australian innovation, and we're a company that's focused very much on developing new treatments for different types of kidney disease. And I'll walk you through a couple of those opportunities today. Just note there are some forward-looking statements in today's presentation, and this presentation is available on the ASX this morning as well. So the first indication that I wanted to talk about, as Stuart kindly mentioned, is focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, or FSGS. It's a rare type of kidney disease, and it's a rare type of kidney disease for which there is really limited treatment options around the world at the moment. Sadly, this disease impacts children down to 2 years old as well as adults. This is not an old person's disease. It impacts everybody. And from diagnosis to kidney failure is typically less than 5 years. Unfortunately for these patients, if they are fortunate enough to get a transplant, around 60% get reoccurring FSGS in the transplanted kidney. So again, not a solution. This is a very high unmet need for patients desperately in need of these treatment options around the world. Now, we're in what's called a Phase 3 clinical trial at the moment, and Phase 3 means it's the last clinical trial before market. So we're very close to that very near-term opportunity of getting this to market to help these patients and bring revenue in for the company and our shareholders. We have reduced risk in this clinical trial in a number of different ways. The first way is in the technical risk. We've reduced the risk in the Phase 2 clinical trial, showing some very encouraging efficacy signals, but also a very strong safety profile, seeing no serious adverse events related to drug in that trial at all. We also, in the Phase 3 trial that we're running at the moment, ran what's called an interim analysis in 2024, which meant we looked at the first cohort, 72 patients, and confirmed that the drug is doing better than placebo at that point in time and was on trajectory to hit our primary endpoint in that study. Again, gives us a lot of confidence in the clinical trial outcome. In April this year, we did what's called a statistical powering review. That's where we look at the statistical power for our primary endpoint, where we saw we have greater than 90% probability or statistical power for that primary endpoint. What that means is if we see the reduction of proteinuria for our primary endpoint as we expect, we have a greater than 90% probability that we will get our statistical endpoint, or p-value, as you would think of it. We've also validated it commercially in that we now have 5 commercial partners in place, and I'll walk through that through today's presentation as well. To do that, I just want to take one step backwards, and that is to explain what is FSGS. What is it we're trying to achieve? FSGS literally means some sections of the kidney are scarred, and what happens over time is more and more sections become scarred until not enough cells left to filter the blood. Looking at the graphic on the right-hand side, starting at point number 1, when patients present, they typically have high blood pressure. That high blood pressure causes a build-up of pressure in those kidney vessels quite specifically, and that leads to point number 2. That constant pressure leads to inflammation of those cells. They become quite inflamed. The inflammation is ongoing and persistent, and that leads to point number 3 at the bottom. Those cells die off. They become scarred, fibrotic, and they die off. Kidney cells are not like other cells in the body. They can't regenerate. And that means that kidney disease is progressive. Once you've gone down that slope, you cannot go back up. So you can imagine if you're now at point number 3, these cells have died off, you go back to point 1, fewer cells doing more work, causing more pressure, causing more inflammation, causing more cell death. So you go round and round this cycle, faster and faster, each time with fewer and fewer cells, till there's not enough left to filter blood, and your kidney fails. Now, the current standard of care works at point number 1. It works on the blood pressure medication, drives down inflammation to try and stop that pressure. Our drug, DMX-200, works at point number 2. What we are doing is driving down inflammation to prevent that scarring and fibrosis. And this is important for context because in our clinical trial, all patients stay on the blood pressure medication. That's really important. And then they take DMX-200 in addition. So proteinuria, I mentioned that word earlier as our primary endpoint. What is proteinuria and why do we measure it? Well, proteinuria is literally protein in the urine. And what happens is in a healthy individual, your kidney is a really good filter. It filters your blood and you should see little or no protein in the urine. When your kidney becomes damaged like it does in FSGS, that filter becomes quite leaky and you end up with protein spilling from the blood into the urine. And it is known that the amount of protein in your urine is a measure of how fast is your kidney disease progressing. So if we can reduce the amount of protein in the urine, it says we are slowing down kidney disease progression, and that's what we're looking for. Very important. This is our baby. This is the phase 3 clinical trial that we're running at the moment. We are running this in 21 countries around the world, and the benefit of that is we have negotiated with 21 regulatory agencies that this one study could be approvable in all of these territories, which would be a great outcome. So patients come into the study, they are stabilised on their background medications, which must be that blood pressure medication, they must be on that. Then they're given a drug or placebo. ARB, that's angiotensin receptor blocker, that is the blood pressure medication. They are followed for a period of 2 years, and at the end of 2 years, we are measuring as the primary outcome that reduction in proteinuria. I mentioned earlier on, we did an interim analysis on the first 72 patients and showed that the drug is doing better than placebo at that point in time. We've also done that statistical power review that says we have the statistical power to resolve that p-value at the end of our study as well. Puts us in a great position. But also what's very interesting on this slide is when you look at the right-hand side, we have what's called an open label extension study. And what that means is that when patients finish the full 2-year study, they have an option to roll into this open label extension study where they're guaranteed drug. Doesn't matter if they're on drug or placebo in the study, they're guaranteed drug in that open label component. What has been very compelling is we are continuing to see greater than 90% of patients who finish ACTION3 roll into that open label extension study. Does that tell us the drug is working? I wish it did. It's a blinded study. What it does tell us is that there are no undue side effects, no burden on the patients. They're very comfortable taking this product, which is an oral capsule, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, very simple. It's possible that they're getting to the end of this ACTION3 study and they are seeing a benefit, proteinuria reduction, so they think they're on drug. Let's hope that's true, and they want to carry on. It's possible they saw no difference in the study or they got worse and they think they're on placebo and they want the drug. Again, let's hope that's true. But that greater than 90% uptake into open label is very encouraging. So to those deals, having had a clinical trial that we are running in 21 countries, that one study being approvable for market in all of these territories means that we've been in a very strong position to close on these commercial transactions, which really helps that commercial validation. We've done 5 commercial deals to date. That means we've had multiple parties through our data room. They've looked at all the data. They know everything we do, still signed on the bottom line, and we've received over 80 million in upfronts that's non-refundable. So that's non-dilutive capital coming into Dimerix. Collectively, across all of these assets, it's worth up to 1.9 billion in upfront potential milestone payments, plus royalties on top. And that's really important because that 1.9 billion sounds a really nice number, but the money is actually a lot in those royalties because you think of these percentages along the bottom, anywhere between 10 to 30% of every sale comes back to Dimerix on a drug that in the US another company has already announced that they're intending to market a product in FSGS at north of $300,000 per patient per year. So you think of these percentages on those sort of numbers, that's also a very compelling return to the company and very exciting for us. One thing I wanted to touch on the back half of the presentation today is our new asset. So we announced literally only a week ago that we have brought a new asset into the company for acute kidney injury, DMX-652. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to walk you through what is this opportunity and why is it so exciting. DMX-652, we're developing in an indication called acute kidney injury. So this is a fantastic fit for Dimerix. It really is a synergistic fit for a number of different reasons. One is it's in kidney disease. It leverages our existing infrastructure in kidney disease. We have internal, our clinical, regulatory, manufacturing team, but also leverages all of that network that we've built over the years with DMX-200, we can leverage for the development of DMX-652. So all of those 21 countries, all of those key opinion leaders, all of those clinical trialists and clinical sites that we have used, we can benefit from in this as well. This is what's called a small molecule. That means it's a relatively straightforward manufacturing process. And again, it's a capsule, synergy with DMX-200. This capsule is a once-a-day capsule. And it is for acute kidney injury in initially high-risk patients undergoing cardiac surgery. It has already completed a number of preclinical models. We'll walk through a couple in just a moment. But also, it's completed all of the phase 1. So it's a phase 2 ready asset with a protocol that's already been approved by FDA that we can take straight into a phase 2. So this is a very compelling asset and a very, very niche fit for Dimerix. Again, just stepping back, what is acute kidney injury? Particularly, what is acute kidney injury associated with cardiac surgery? Well, to put this into perspective, when patients come in for cardiac surgery, they're often put onto a pump. So when they're put onto a pump to keep the heart and keep the body moving, active while they're having their heart surgery, what happens is that a lot of the organs can be starved of oxygen. And the kidney is surprisingly a very oxygen-hungry organ. Next to the heart, it is the largest consumer of oxygen and uses the most amount of energy in the body. So what happens is when it's starved of oxygen, it ends up with this ischemia in the middle. That is that starvation of oxygen. When these patients are taken off pump, then they're back with your blood circulating as normal, it rushes back through these organs, which is called reperfusion, and it causes this massive destruction through the kidney of some of these vessels. And the mitochondria, some of this is high school biology, if you can remember your high school biology, you have the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, the little batteries that you have in every single cell of your body. There is a high number of those in the kidneys specifically because of that energy need. They rupture. When they rupture, that causes catastrophic kidney damage, and these kidney cells die in hours. This is not like FSGS, where it dies over months or even years. This is within hours. You end up with this kidney cell death. And what it leads to is essentially longer stays in ICU. It leads to long-term kidney damage. Many of these patients end up on dialysis, and certainly long-term kidney injury. What was really compelling and actually a little bit frightening is that 1 in 4 patients, 25% of patients going through cardiac surgery end up with an acute kidney injury. That goes up to almost 50% in these higher risk individuals. So this is a very high unmet need for which there is nothing on market at all at the moment. So a very strong opportunity. I mentioned before the preclinical data. This is just 2 models. They represent, one represents that ischemia and reperfusion, so it's starving the kidney of oxygen and then flooding it through with that catastrophic damage. That's on the left-hand side. And in the middle is representing that long-term kidney damage and the fibrosis. And DMX-652 in both of these models has given a statistically significant benefit to the model. Now, this is just 2 of a number of models that have been done, and so all very compelling, for which we will publish in the near future. I mentioned before a phase 1 study. This is a large phase 1, and in my 30 years in the industry, it's one of the largest phase 1s I've ever seen. 85 patients received drug in this study. Again, that's telling us no serious adverse events seen in these patients, very comfortable to take the drug. It was rapidly absorbed. It's given us our dosing, so we understand which dose to take into the phase 2, and puts us in a very strong position to move into that phase 2, which looks like this. So the phase 2 clinical trial is going to be, again, a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled. Unlike FSGS, this is a much easier study to recruit. It's also much shorter. It's not a 2-year time frame. This is a 90-day time frame. So patients' primary endpoint is the incidence of that acute kidney injury at 7 days. But we also measure what's called MAKE 30 and MAKE 90. Now, MAKE is an acronym. It's major adverse kidney events at 30 days and 90 days. And so that MAKE 90 is a really important endpoint for this phase 2 because it is the primary endpoint for approvability in the phase 3 for global marketing. So we will measure that in this phase 2 as well, for which we are ready to go with drug manufactured. And so we've acquired a very compelling asset ready to move forward. So that just leads me to the key inflection points for Dimerix coming up. And they've got the 2 streams here. You've got DMX-200 along the top line. We expect to recruit the pediatric cohort. Does not impact the adult cohort timeline at all. It's just an added benefit. We have the first patient is expected to finish that open label study that I mentioned before and move into the post-trial access. We're enabling patients to move into that post-trial access, as well as then our full trial readout in early 2028. Overlaid that along the bottom is DMX-652, where we have this back half of the year setting up our phase 2 clinical trial. We'll be preparing the clinical trial sites, making sure that we've got the ethics submission, making sure we've got drug at the right sites around the world. The patents are assigned to us, composition and matter that are already granted, as well as the first patient dosed early in 2027, an interim analysis in 2027, and the full study reading out in 2028. So 2 very differentiated assets, both in renal disease, high unmet indications, independent timelines. And what that's going to do is really give us that cadence and news flow through the rest of 27 and 28. So just the final slide, just a reminder, DMX or DXB cash balance at the end of last quarter, we are due to put our 4C out any day now, just shy of 27 million. We also announced last week we've got the 10 million facility that we have access to. We can draw down as we need to, and 14 million coming in from our most recent licensing deal. So this is all non-dilutive funds for the shareholder, which takes us through and funded through to the completion of ACTION3, as well as that initiation of 652. And we are in negotiations for a further 40 million non-dilutive funding that take us beyond ACTION3 and completion of the Phase 2 asset. So a fantastic opportunity for investors. I will be in the hall for any questions after the seminar.